Harry Potter, Chapter 15, The Forbidden Forest. Things couldn't have been worse. Fletch took them down to Professor McGonagall's study on the first floor, where they sat and waited without saying a word to each other. Hermione was trembling. Excuses, the abilities, and wild cover-up stories chased each other around Harry's brain, each more valuable than the last. He couldn't see how they were going to get out of trouble this time. They weren't concerned. How could they have been so stupid to ask to forget the cloak? There was no reason on earth that Professor McGonagall would accept for being out of bed and creeping around the school in the dead of night, let alone being a tallest astronomy tower, which is out of bounds except for classes, and Norbert, and the invisibility cloak. And they might as well be packing their bag already. Had Harry thought that thing could have been worse, he was wrong. When Professor McGonagall appeared, she was leading Neville. Harry! Neville burst out the moment he saw the other two. I was trying to find you to warn you. I heard Malfoy saying he was going to catch you. He said you had to drag. Harry shook his head violently to put Neville up. Professor McGonagall had seen she looked more likely to breathe fire than Norbert as she towered over the three of them. I would never have believed any of you. Mr. Flinch say you were up to this astronomy tower. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Explain yourself. It was the first time Hermione had ever failed to answer a teacher question. She was staring at her slipper, as still as a statue. I think I've got a good idea what was been going on, said Professor McGonagall. It doesn't take a genius to work it out. You fed Draco Malfoy some cock and bull story about dragon, trying to get him out of bed and get into trouble. I've already caught him. I suppose you think it's funny that Longbottom heard that story and believe it too. Harry caught Neville's eye and tried to tell him without word that this wasn't true, because Neville was looking stunned and hurt. Poor blundering Neville. Harry knew that what it must have cost him to try and find them in the dark and warn them. I'm disgusted, said Professor McGonagall. 4 students out of bed in one night. I've never heard of such a thing before. You, Miss Granger, I thought you had more sense. As for you, Mr. Porter, I thought Gryffindor meant for you more than this. All 3 of you will receive detention. Yes, you too, Mr. Longbottom. Nothing gives you the right to walk around the school at night, especially these days. It's very dangerous, and 50 points will be taken from Gryffindor. 50? Harry gasped. They will lose the lead he had won in the first Quidditch match. 50 points each, said Professor McGonagall, breathing heavily through her long, pointed nose. Professor, please, you can't. Don't tell me what I can and can't do, Porter. Now get back to bed, all of you. I've never been more ashamed of Gryffindor student. 150-point loss and puts Gryffindor in last places. In one night, they ruined any chance Gryffindor had for the House Cup. Harry felt as though the bottom had dropped out of his stomach. How could they ever made up for this? Harry didn't sleep all night. He could hear Neville sobbing his pillow for what seemed like hours. Harry couldn't think of anything to say to comfort him. He knew Neville, like himself, was dreading the dawn. What would happen when the rest of the Gryffindor find out what they had done? At first, Gryffindor, passing the giant hourglass that recorded the house's point next day, thought they had been a mistake. How could they suddenly have 150 points fewer than yesterday? And then the story started to spread. Harry Potter and the famous Harry Potter, the hero of 2 Quidditch match, had lost him all these points. Him and a couple of other stupid first years from being out of the most popular and admired people at the school. Harry was suddenly the most hated. Even the Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff turned on him because everyone had been longing to see Slytherin lose the House Cup. Everywhere Harry went, people pointed and didn't trouble to lower their voice as they insulted him. Slytherin, on the other hand, clapped as he walked past them, whistling and cheering. "Thanks, Porter. We own you one." Only Ron stood by him. "They'll all forget this in a few weeks. Fred and George have lost lots. Have lost a lot of point in all the time they've been here, and people still like them. They've never lost 150 points in one go, though, have they?" said Harry miserably. "Well, no," Ron admitted. "It was a bit late to repair the damage." But Harry swore to himself not to meddle in things that weren't his business from now on. He'd had it with sneaking around and spying. He felt so ashamed of himself that he went to Wood and offered to resign from the Quidditch team. Resign? What thunder? What good will that do? How are we going to get any point back when we can't win Quidditch? But even Quidditch had lost its fun. The rest of the team wouldn't speak to Harry during practice. If they had to speak about him, they'd call him the Seeker. Hermione and Neville were suffering too. They didn't have a bad time as Harry because they weren't as well known, but nobody would speak to them either. Hermione stopped drawing attention herself in classes, keeping her head down and working in silence. Harry was almost glad that the exam wasn't far away. All the revision he had to do kept his mind off his misery. He, Ron, and Hermione kept themselves working late in the night, trying to remember the ingredient of the complicated potion, learning charm and spell by heart, memorized the date of magical discovery and goblin rebellions. Then, about a week before the exam were due to start, Harry knew a resolution not to influence in anything that didn't concern him was to put in an unexpected test. Walking back from the library on his own one afternoon, he heard somebody whimpering from the classroom up ahead. He drew closer. He heard a choral voice. "No, no, not again, please." It sounded as though someone was threatening him. Harry moved closer. All right, he heard Quirrell sob. Next second, Quirrell came out hurrying on the classroom, straightening his turban. He was so pale and looked as though he was about to cry. He strode out of the sight. Harry didn't think Quirrell had even noticed him. He waited until Quirrell's footsteps had disappeared, then peered into the classroom. It was empty, but a door stood ajar at the other end. Harry was halfway toward it, and before he remembered that he had promised himself about not meddling, all the same, he'll have the gamble 12 Philosopher's Stone. The Snape had just left the room, and from what Harry had just heard, Snape would be walking with a new spring in his step. Quirrell seemed to have given in at last. Harry went back to the library, where Hermione was testing Ron astronomy. Harry had told them what he had heard. "Snape had done it then," said Ron. "If Quirrell told him how to break his anti-dark force spell." "They're still fluffy, though," said Hermione. "Maybe Snape found out how to get past him without asking Hagrid," said Ron, looking up at the thousands of books surrounding them. "I bet there's a book somewhere in here telling you how to get past a giant three-headed dog." "So what do we do, Harry?" The light of adventure was kindling again in her own eyes, but Hermione answered before Harry could. "Go to Dumbledore. That's what we should have done age ago. If we try anything ourselves, we'll be thrown out for sure." "Well, we've got no proof," said Harry. "Quirrell is too scared to back us up. Snape only got to say he doesn't know how the troll got in at Halloween, and that he was nowhere near the third floor. What do you think they'll believe him? Believe him or us? It's not exactly a secret. We hate him. Dumbledore think we made it up to get him sacked. Filch wouldn't help us for his life depended on it. He's too friendly with Snape, and the more students get thrown out, the better he'll think. And don't forget, we're not supposed to know about the Stoner or Fluffy. That'll take a lot of explaining. If we just do a bit of poking around." "No," said Harry flatly. "We've done enough poking around." He pulled a Malvet Jupiter toward him and started learning the name of its moon. The following morning note were delivered to Harry, Hermione, and Neville at the breakfast table. They were all the same. "Your detention will take place at 11 o'clock tonight. Meet Mr. Filch." Meet Mr. Filch. In the entrance hall, Professor McGonagall. Yeah, Professor Miniver McGonagall. Harry had forgotten they still had detention to do fa- in the fortune over the point they had lost. He half expected Hermione to complain that this was a whole night of revision lost, but she didn't say a word. Like Harry, she felt they deserved what they got. At 11 o'clock that night, they said goodbye to Ron in the common room and went down to the entrance hall with Neville. Filch was already there, and so was Malfoy. Harry had also forgotten that Malfoy had got detention too. Follow me, said Filch, lighting a lamp, leading them outside. I bet you'll think twice about breaking the school rule again. Won't ya? He continued, leering at them. Oh yes, hard work and pain are the best teacher if you ask me. It's just pity to let an old punishment die out. Hang you by your wrist from the ceiling for a few days. I've got a chain still in my office, keep 'em well oiled in case they're ever needed. Right, off we go, and don't think of running off. Now, it will be worse for you if you do. They marched across the dark ground. Dark ground. Neville keeps sniffing. Harry wondered what their punishment was going to be. It must be something really horrible, or Fletcher wouldn't be sounding so delighted. The moon is bright, but clouds scudding across it keep growing into darkness. Ahead, Harry could see the lighted window of Hagrid's hut when they heard a distant shout. Is that you, Filch? Hurry up! I want to get started. Harry hard rose. If they were going to be working with Hagrid, it wouldn't be so bad. His relief must have shown in his face. Because Filch said, I suppose you think you'll be enjoying yourself with that oaf. Well, think again, boy. It's into the forest you're going, and I'm much mistaken if you all come in one pieces. At this, Neville let out a moan, and Malfoy stopped dead in his track. The forest, the forest, he repeated, and he didn't sound quite as cool as usual. We can't go in there at night. They're all sort of thing. They're werewolf, I heard. Neville clutched the sleeve of Harry's robe and made a choking noise. What's your lookout, isn't it? Said Fletcher's voice cracking with glee. Shouldn't have thought of them. Werewolf before you got into trouble. Trouble? Shouldn't you? Hagrid came striding toward them out of dark, Fang at his heel. He was crying at a large crossbow, and a quiver of arrow hung about his shoulder. About time, he said. I've been waiting for half an hour already. All right, Harry, Hermione? I shouldn't be too friendly to them, Hagrid. I shouldn't be too friendly to them, Hagrid, said Fish coldly. They're here to be punished, after all. That's why you're late, is it? Said Hagrid, frowning at Filch. Been lecturing them, eh? Not your place to do that. You've down your bit. I'll take them over here then. I'll be back at dawn, said Filch, for what's left for them. He added nastily, and he turned and started back toward the castle, his lamp bumping away in the darkness. Malfoy now turned to Hagrid. I'm not going the forest, he said, and Harry was pleased to hear the tone of panic in his voice. You are if you want to stay at Hogwarts, said Hagrid fiercely. You've done wrong, and you've got to pay for it. But this for the servant stuff, it's not for student to do. I thought we'd be writing a line or something. If my father knew I was doing this, he would tell you how it is at Hogwarts. Hagrid growled. Tell you what, Hagrid growled, writing a line. What's good that to anyone? You'll do something useful or you'll get out. If you think your father rather you were expelled, then get back of your towel and pack. Go on. Malfoy didn't move. He looked at Hagrid fiercely, but then drop his gaze. Right then, said Hagrid. Now listen carefully, 'cause it's dangerous now what we're gonna do tonight, and I don't want no one talking risk. Follow me here for a moment. He led them in the very edge of the forest. Holding his lamp up high, he pointed down a narrow, winding earth track that disappeared into a thick black tree. A light breeze lifted their hair as they looked in the forest. Look there, said Hagrid. See that stuff shining on the ground? Silvery stuff. That's unicorn blood. There's a unicorn in there. And they've been hurt badly by some meds. This is the second time in a week I found one dead last Wednesday. We're gonna try and find the poor thing. We might have to put it on its misery. And what if whatever hurt the unicorn find us first? Said Malfoy, unable to keep the fear out of his voice. There's nothing that live in the forest that will hurt you if you're with me or Fang, said Hagrid, and keep to the path right now. We're gonna split into two parties and follow the trail in different directions. They're split all over the place. It must have been staggering around since last night at least. I want Fang, said Malfoy quickly, looking Fang long teeth. All right, I warn you, he's a coward, said Hagrid. So me, Harry, and Hermione, I'll go one way, and Draco, Neville, and Fang will go the other. If anyone of us find a unicorn, we'll send a green spark, right? Get one out of practice now. That's it. And if anyone gets in trouble, send a red spark, and we'll come and find you. So be careful. Let's go. The forest was black and silent. A little way, and it reached a fork in the earth path. And Harry, Hermione, and Hagrid took a left path, while Malfoy, Neville, and Fang took the right. They walked in silence, their eyes on the ground. Every now and then, a ray of moonlight through the branch above it lit a spot of silver-blue blood on the fallen leaf. Harry saw that Hagrid looked very worried. Could a werewolf be killing the unicorn? Harry asked. Not fast enough, said Hagrid. It's not easy to catch a unicorn. They're a powerful magic creature. I never knew one to be hurt before. They walked past a mossy tree stump. Harry could hear running water. There must have been streams somewhere close by. There was still a spot of unicorn blood here, and there along the winding path. You all right, Hermione? Harry whispered. Don't worry, it can't have gone far if they're badly hurt, and then we'll be able to get behind the tree. And then we'll be able to get behind the tree. Hagrid seized Harry and Hermione and hustled them off the path behind a towering oak. He pulled out a arrow, fitted with his crossbow, raising it, ready to fire. The three of them listened. Something was slithering over the dead leaf nearby. It sounded like a cloak trailing off the ground. Hagrid was squinting up the dark path, but after a few seconds, the sound faded away. I knew it, he murmured. There's some in here that shouldn't be. A werewolf? Harry suggested. That wasn't no werewolf, and it wasn't no unicorn either, said Hagrid grimly. Right, follow me, but careful now. They walked more slowly, ears straining from the faintest sound. Suddenly, a clearing ahead, something definitely moved. Who's there? Hagrid called. Show yourself. I'm armed. And the clearing came. Was it a man or a horse? To the waist, a man with a red hair and beard, but below the horse, gleaming chest buddy with a long reddish hair. Harry and Hermione jaw dropped. Oh, it's you, Ronan, said Harry in relief. How are you? He walked forward and shook his censure hand. Good evening to you, Hagrid, said Ronan. He had a deep, sorrowful voice. Were you going to shoot me? Can't be too careful, Ronan, said Hagrid, putting his crossbow. There's some bad loser in this force. This is Harry Potter and Hermione Granger, by the way, student of that school. And this is Ronan. You too. He's a censor. Wouldn't notice, said Hermione faintly. Good evening, said Ron. Student, are you? And do you learn much up at that school? A bit, said Hermione timidly. A bit? Well, that's something, Ronan sighed. He flung back his head and started at the sky. Mars is bright today. It's bright tonight. Yeah, said Hagrid, glancing up at two. Listen, I'm glad we've run into you, Ron, because there's a unicorn been hurt. You seen anything? Ronan didn't answer immediately. He started unblinkingly upward and sighed again. Always the innocent are the very first victim, he said. So it has been for 8 past. So it is now. Yeah, said Hagrid. Yeah, said Hagrid. But have you seen anything, Ronan? Anything unusual? Unusually bright? Yeah, but I was meaning anything unusually a bit nearer home, said Hagrid. So you haven't noticed anything strange. Yet again, Ronan took a while to answer. At last, he said, the Force hide many secret. A movement in the tree behind Ronan made Hagrid raise his bow again. But it was only second center, a black hair and bodied and wilder looking than Ronan. Hello, Bunno, said Hagrid. All right. Good evening, Hagrid. I hope you're all well. Well enough. Look, I've just been asking Ronan. You seen anything odd in here lately? Only there's a unicorn been injured. Would you know anything about it? Bane walked over to the stand next to Ronan. He looked skyward. Mars is bright tonight, he said simply. We've heard, said Hagrid grumpily. Well, if either of you do see anything, let me know, won't you? I'll be off then. Harry and Hermione followed him out of clearing, staring over their shoulder at Ronan and Bane still until the tree blocked their view. Never, said Hagrid irritably. Try and get a straight answer out of the center. Rudy stargazer, not interested in anything closer than the moon. Are there many of them in here? Asked Hermione. Oh, a fair few. Keep themselves to themselves mostly, but they're good enough about turning up if I ever want a word. They're a deep mind center. They know thing. Just don't let on much. Do you think that the center have heard earlier? Did that sound like a hoof to you? Nah, if you ask me, that was just been killing the unicorn. Never heard of anything like it before. They walked on through the dense, dark tree. Harry kept being nervously over his shoulder. He had a nasty feeling that they were being watched. He was very glad that they had Hagrid and his crossbow with them. They had just passed a bend in the path when Hermione grabbed Hagrid's arm. Hagrid, look, Red Spark! The other are in trouble! You two wait here, Hagrid shouted. Stay on the path. I'll come back for you. I don't care if Malfoy has, but if something got Neville, it's our fault. He's here in the first place. The minute dragged by, their ears seemed sharper than usual. Harry seemed to be picking up every sign of wind, every cracked twig. What's going on? Where were the others? At last, a great crunching noise announced Hagrid returned. Malfoy, Neville, and Vane were with him. Hagrid was thumbing. Malfoy, it seemed, had sneaked up behind Neville and had grabbed him for a joke. Neville had panicked and sent up Spark. We'll be lucky to catch anything now with the racket you two are making. Right, we're changing group. Neville, you stay with me and Hermione. Harry, you go with Fang and this idiot. I'm sorry, Harry added in a whisper to Harry, but we'll have a harder time frightening you, and we've got to get this done. So Harry set off with the heart of the Force with Malfoy and Fang. They walked for nearly half an hour, deeper and deeper into the forest, until the path became almost impossible to follow because the trees were so thick. Harry thought the blood seemed to be getting thicker. There was a splash on the root of the tree, as though the poor creature had been thrashing around in pain close by. Harry could be clearing ahead through the tangled branch of an ancient oak. Look, he murmured, holding out his arm to stop Malfoy. Something bright white was gleaming on the ground. They inched closer. It was a unicorn, all right, and it was dead. Harry had never seen anything so beautiful and sad. Its slender leg was stuck out at an odd angle, and it had fallen, and its mane was spread pearly white on the dark leaf. Harry had taken out one step toward it, and when Slytherin's sound made him freeze where he stood. A bush on the edge of the clearing quivered. Then, out of the shadow, a hooded figure came crawling across the ground like the shadow. A hooded figure came crawling across the ground like some stalking beast. Harry, Malfoy, and Fang stood transfixed. The cloaked figure reached the unicorn and looked. It lowered head and over the ground in the animal's side and began to drink its blood. Ah! Malfoy let out a terrible scream and bolted. So did Fang. The hooded figure raised its head and looked right at Harry. Unicorn blood was dribbling down its front. It got to its feet and came swiftly toward him. He couldn't move for fear. Then a pain pierced his head like he'd never felt before. It was as though his scar was on fire. Half blinded, he staggered backward. He heard a hoof behind him, galloping, and something jumped clean over him, charging at his figure. The pain in Harry's head was so bad he fell to his knee. It got a minute or two to pass. When he looked up, the figure had gone. A sentry was standing over him, not Ronan or Bane. This one looked younger. He had a white blonde hair and polymer body. "Are you all right?" said the sentry, pulling Harry to his feet. "Yes, thank you. What was that?" The sentry didn't answer. He had astonishingly blue eyes, like pale sapphires. He looked carefully at Harry, his eyes lingering on the scar which stood out, livid on Harry's forehead. "You are the Porter boy," he said. "You had better get back to Hagrid. The forest is not safe this time, especially for you. Can you ride? It'll be quicker this way. My name is Ferns," he added, as he lowered himself onto his front leg so that Harry could clamber on his back. There was suddenly a sound from galloping from the other side of the clearing. Ronan and Bane came bursting through the trees, their flake heaving and sweaty. "Ferns," Bane stuttered, "what are you doing? You have a puma on your back. Have you no shame? Are you a common mule?" "Well, do you realize who this is?" said Ferns. "This is Potter Boy. The quicker he leaves this fort, the better." "What have you been telling him?" growled Bane. "Remember, Ferns, we're sworn not just ourselves against the heaven. Have we not read that this is come the movement of the planet?" Ronan pawed the ground nervously. I'm sure Ferns thought he was acting for the best," he said in his gloomy voice. Bane kicked his black leg in anger. "For the best? What is what to do with us? Censure or concern with that what I had foretold? It is not a business to run around like donkey after stray human in our forest." Ferns suddenly reared on his hind leg in anger, so that Harry had to grab his shoulder to stay on. "Do you not see that unicorn?" Ferns below at Bane. "Do you not understand why was killed, or have the planet not left you in the secret? I set myself against what is lurking in the sports, Bane. Yes, with human alongside me, if I must." And Ferns whisked around, with Harry clutching as his best he could. They plunged off the trees, leaving Ronan and Bane behind them. Harry didn't have a clue what was going on. "Why Bane so angry?" he asked. "What was the thing you saved me from, anyway?" Ferns showed to a walk, warned Harry to keep his head bowed in case for low-hanging branches, but did not answer Harry's question. They made their way through the tree in silence for so long that Harry thought Ferns didn't walk to talk to him anymore. They weren't passing through a particular dense patch of tree, however, when Ferns suddenly stopped. "Harry Potter, do you know what unicorn blood is used for?" "No," said Harry, startled at an odd question. "We've only used the horn and that tail hair and potion." "That is because it is the monstrous thing to slay a unicorn," said Ferns. "Only one who has nothing to lose and everything would gain would commit such a crime. The blood of unicorn will keep you alive, even if you were such an inch from death. But at terrible prices, you have slain something pure and defenseless to save yourself, and you have put a half-life, a cursed life, from the moment the blood touched your lips." Harry stared at the back of Fern's head, which was dappled silver at the moonlight. "But who'd that disparate?" he wondered aloud. "If you're going to be cursed forever, death better, isn't it?" "It is? It is," Ferns agreed, "unless all you need is to stay alive long enough to drink something else. Something that will bring you back to full strength and power. Something that you mean can never die, Miss Potter. Do you know what is hidden in the school at this very moment? The philosopher's stone, of course. The elixir of life. But I don't understand